All right, thank you, Patrick. As we get going, ABC News. We are looking at a pretty nice start to our Tuesday. 19 days into November. Hope you're having a good start in our region. Of course, up into Maine, WTSN AM and FM, brand new signal in the Lakes region on top of our WEMJ there. If you like the digital clear, crystal clear, 98.3 FM HD2. As we get going on this pretty nice looking Tuesday, J Dog, weather wise. We might be getting some of the wet stuff towards the end of the week, and we need it with all these brush fires, the latest one in Brentwood. And we've been going. But as we get going on this Tuesday morning, hope you're having a good start. We want to stress or let you know that it's a good problem to have. If you're traveling around the country, anywhere in the world, worldwide, hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the pulse of NH, making it real easy for you. The pulse of NH. And of course, now we have if you want to watch, we're on YouTube as well. Very simple for you on the YouTube channel, The Pulse of NH, as we get going. And you can do that in the 9 to 10 hour. We have a lot going on. Pack show for you this morning. We're going to be hearing shortly from the youngest press secretary ever named by a president in the United States, or for the United States, Caroline Leavitt of New Hampshire. And she's going to be joining us in just a little bit. And well, actually, she's joining us right now. So I want to bring in Caroline Leavitt as a newsmaker out of the gate, as someone I got to know through her media stuff. And people may not realize she'd already served in the first Trump administration on the press media side of things, ran for Congress in the first congressional district. It was the nominee. And then, of course, for the last year or two, has been on the trail with the president-elect, former President Donald Trump. Now she is a St. Anselm grad as well, by the way. We'll be hearing from Neil Levesque in a little bit. Now she is the incoming press secretary for the leader of the free world, President-elect Donald Trump. Caroline Leavitt of New Hampshire. Good morning. Well, I imagine, as they say in this day and age, that your phone kind of probably blew up the other morning after it was announced that you were selected or named the incoming press secretary for President Trump. That must have been an interesting morning. On you found out you probably had a lot of new friends. For people who may not know about your background, talk about, family, folks. I know about it. I think your parents are small business owners. I know you at least have a brother. I saw some great shots of looked like a young nephew, I think, coming into the family. But talk about growing up in New Hampshire and sports, college, the whole background. Can I ask you, I always like we had Mike Rowe on my show Friday with our bringing back the trades, and I always like to ask, where did it all start? In my case, I had a late grandmother when I grew up after my dad had passed, and she was involved. Believe it or not, you'd love this, as a Republican in Massachusetts, and as a woman back then, one of the first to ever run for state rep. And she took me around to what they called teas or coffees, where they would talk politics. So I was a young kid. Where did the political gene for Caroline Leavitt come from? Because you're pretty darn good at media, but you're also pretty darn good at the political thing. Where'd that come from? Caroline Levitt, named press secretary for President-elect Donald Trump. I want to go back to the family thing for a moment. I wasn't surprised when I heard this because you'd been one of the lead press people or the press person during the campaign. It made sense to me. Plus, you'd served in the Trump administration the first time. What was it? I'm just curious. What was the message or the phone call to mom and dad that you had been asked by the president to serve? That's awesome. Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that because I wanted the personal because this a lot of folks may not realize. Let's put politics aside for a minute. We're a relatively smaller state, but a very impactful state politically, and I think you are aware, Caroline Levitt, that the polls were all wrong here. In fact, New Hampshire's probably in the swing state category going forward because in the end, it tightened between Harris and Trump in New Hampshire to just a few points. Kelly Ayotte had an overwhelming win, and all the polls had it dead heat with Kelly Ayotte and Joyce Craig. And you look at the state House of Representatives, the state Senate, the Executive Council. So New Hampshire was a little more red than I even thought going in, but I knew the gap was closing here between Trump and Harris. You could feel it that the momentum had stopped. But I guess the question I want to ask you is so politics aside, I believe you're going to be the youngest press secretary. It might have been was it Ziegler in the Nixon administration was just under 30. So here you are. I don't mean to ask. I'm too smart and as a dad, I won't ask, but I know you're well under 30. So the question I want to ask, which is pretty cool and historic, I don't care who you are and what your politics, the president of the United States is someone you know and know well, and you've been working and surfing. But when he did talk to you just the other day about this, can you share a little bit of what that's like? Were you in a vehicle? Were you in an office? Was it on the phone? I'm just curious. Oh, wait a minute. I thought that was your brother's I saw a picture of you with that little guy. That's your oh my goodness. We're gonna have a young son learning the ropes in the White House. My goodness. Wow. Well, well, that's pretty cool, and congrats, because I actually saw some of those pictures during the campaign, and I know you're close, I think it was a brother, and I thought it was a nephew. Well, for you know what? That's a really cool story, and I think it's pretty cool the president tapped you for that, and, good luck, and you know what? I'm not gonna say anything, don't get mad at me, anyone. Sometimes you have a tough act to follow, I think you're gonna do just fine in this job. I'll leave it at that. And well, you know what? And maybe you'll answer questions from an enterprising press that will ask questions. That might be cool to see, like the old days with Marlon Fitzwater and some of the older press secretaries. All right, thank you. Good luck to you. Thanks for sharing some of the personal stuff. Good morning, New Hampshire, the pulse of an age. Caroline Levitt, thank you. All right. Well, you learn something new every day. All right, John Decker, our own White House correspondent, and then Maria Prue, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, really shaking up healthcare. Something that too few people have talked about, but I really like what they're doing here in New Hampshire when it comes to people looking at planning in 2025 their health insurance coverage, what they need to be aware of with open enrollment, but also I think, well, as I credit Amanda Grapponi Osmer bringing back the trades with Mike Rowe. I think she got that ball rolling, and it was Maria who, on my show, within the last year or so, really has led this charge to change how employers, individuals, and insurance providers look at mental health coverage as part of primary health care. It really is, and even the Manchester VA is looking at that way, and I think it's long overdue. Back with that and Decker and a lot more. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play The Pulse of an Age. Back in a moment. So I had no. Yeah. And every single one of them had passed. And I mean, it's so sad. Oh my goodness. So we're coming back. Wow. That's cool that you went there, though. Yeah. They paid a big price. The CEO, how do I enter? President, CEO? President, General Manager. Okay. All right. We're going to hear from Caroline's, one of her former professors, Neil Levesque, bottom of the hour, St. Anselm College, Institute of Politics. But having Caroline Levitt call in, we're going to be having Maria Prue in a moment talking about healthcare from the Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, the president on that. But real quickly, Caroline Levitt, John Decker, Owen, White House correspondent, just calling in, youngest press secretary, of course, grew up in New Hampshire, families here, youngest press secretary for the incoming president ever selected. What a gracious, fun interview. She shared how the president called her and her family, their reaction, and what how she goes into this role. But John Decker, our White House correspondent. Good morning, John. Yeah, and it's interesting, John. I think you'll be able to actually get a question or two in more than you did in the. No, I'm kidding. I'll put a good word in for you. She's from New Hampshire. John, what do you have for us this morning? A lot going on in the world, and a lot of transition going on with nominations. Things are happening quickly. Yeah, I don't mean to get into trouble here, but a younger buddy of mine years ago, I'd hired way back in the side of I guess TV stuff. Tony Sayag was deputy Treasury Secretary under Mnuchin in that tax bill, and he's front and center in the transition. I would imagine Tony Sayag. I don't know if you met Tony before. He did some stuff on Fox the last few years. I would imagine. Well, I bet you, John, Tony will be front and center on that economic thing. That's my prediction. Thank you, John Decker, our White House correspondent. Thank you, sir. All right. Well, press secretary, our own White House secretary, press national correspondent John Decker, Maria Prue, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, taking all this in our new studios, our bigger studios, 6-hour studios. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, talking about healthcare 2025 planning, open enrollment. But first, how are you?
I'm good, Jack. Thanks for having me. Tough act to follow, though, I will say.
Yeah, but I do love on a personal side, it's how I do my show. You were sharing how you went to we were talking about history, and you went to the Kennedy Library down on museum. I'm sorry, because I was talking about the Kennedy Library in South Boston. You went to the museum, and you said it was a wonderful experience.
Wonderful. Very, very emotional.
A lot of history, isn't it?
Ton.
Is it neat?
It's
Yeah.
worth going. It's in Hyannis.
Yeah. I mean, the images still are in my head like it was yesterday. And I imagine a lot of people around the world as well as here too. Let's talk healthcare. 2025. You're beginning to, you look at things and people have to think about health insurance and who in New Hampshire, they need to be aware of open enrollment. And it's going on when? Right now?
Right now, yeah, I think that's the most important message. If you need an individual or family plan, open enrollment is here, and it runs through January 15th. But we want folks to understand that in order to have coverage effective for January 1st, which is when most people want to have their coverage effective, you need to sign on to a plan by December 15th. So December 15th is an important deadline.
It's coming quickly.
Absolutely, less than a month away. However, if you need coverage for after 1/1, so February 1st, you can actually enroll up through January 15th.
Well, I can't believe Thanksgiving a week from this Thursday, right? Are there certain benefits, Maria, that are included, in the plans that people would actually buy or purchase from the marketplace?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Jack. We have a lot of great benefits we're offering through our health plans here at Anthem. We have full coverage for all preventative health care, such as mammograms, colonoscopies, regular checkups. And really exciting, in order to encourage the use of primary care and those preventative checkups, we are going to reward our members a $50 incentive reward for all members who get their preventative checkup in that first 90 days of the plan. In addition, and something you've been a true champion of, which we appreciate, is the work we continue to do in the behavioral health space. And so, lowering copays through our plans that are available on the exchange down to that primary care level to encourage our members to seek mental health as primary care.
Maria, I think you know that I believe inflation has been deeper and more cumulative over the last several years versus what it shows now, and it's taken a bite into household budgets. So, what do you say to someone who wants to get some coverage or plan, but they can't afford it to buy the health plan right now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think what we want folks to understand is that there is a lot of help available. So when you look at the cost of the plans online, we want to remind folks that there are enhanced subsidies available online that can help you afford those plans. They actually take the cost of the premium monthly payment down. In addition, there are also plans being offered where not only can you get a subsidy to help with the monthly premium, but you can buy a plan that helps you with the actual cost share. So things like copays, deductibles, co-insurance. And so we really encourage folks to understand their options and know that there is financial help available.
I want to talk about employers in a moment, Maria Prue, but let's talk a little more about individual listeners. We have a lot of listeners, all stages in life out there online, as well as our network of AM and FM stations. How can folks out there sign up? Can you walk us through kind of the individual health plan? Because there's a like menu approach. I mean, I haven't done this. I'm just curious.
Sure. So Granite Staters can go to healthcare.gov, that's gov, to compare plans in New Hampshire and then sign up for a plan. And that's how you enroll in a plan. But we certainly encourage all individuals to reach out to our local broker community. We have brokers all over this state that are there to help individuals navigate their options and understand what plan works best for them. We also have an amazing navigator organization in New Hampshire and again, these are all free resources for individuals to get education on what would work best for them. And then, of course, they can call Anthem at 1-844-304-8780 for any information that they might need on an Anthem plan.
And is that number up there on the site? If they go to Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield New Hampshire, they can Google that?
Yep.
I know Aaron Hahn's in our studio, and I was telling him the other day about this thing called Google. Google, it's an amazing search thing. I don't know if you knew that, Aaron. Hey, real quickly, what's the deadline again? You said earlier, is it December 15th?
So December 15th for a plan effective day of January 1st.
Okay.
Or deadline of January 15th for a plan effective on February 1st.
Oh, that's an important distinction. What about employers? We talked about people. What about employers? Because a big part of work and employee and the benefit is the health side. What should they be looking for in choosing a plan for their employees, their team?
Yeah, sure. So as we know, we're also in the biggest open enrollment period for those employers who are shopping for a plan for their employees. And at Anthem, we talk a lot with our employers about what they should be asking of their carrier and of their broker when they're shopping for plans. First and foremost, we'll say it again, behavioral health. What is your coverage? What are the options available? Pharmacy costs, right? We all know that the pharmacy costs are growing. So you'll want to understand, how does your plan control those pharmacy costs? Digital tools that are available for your employees. What is your health plan offering for a digital tool so that if they need access to basic information, they don't have to call in, they can just use the digital tools available. And then what's the member experience like? So when your employees do have chronic conditions or significant health needs, what are the resources available to your employees to call in to get access to those resources?
Maria, before we let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about mental health and coverage, part of primary health. And, we spent so much time last week talking about bringing back the trades. It's just common sense to me that the trade should never have left high school. Or it was fine if you want to become a neurosurgeon, but if you want to become a carpenter or a plumber, that's fine too. So I don't know where along the line, but I applaud you as an innovator, a leader shaking this up. Mental health, one of the biggest problems most family face, anxiety, depression, and all this stuff. And it was sort of separated, relegated to be like over here, something we don't talk about or focus. And we're not looking at staffing and bringing in more technicians and experts in mental health. I look at younger people. I talk to college administrators, and they say that younger folks are suffering much more open mental health challenges and emotional stuff than they ever remember. So how are we doing in this state on getting mental health under that primary health care umbrella, both for employers, individuals, insurance, all that?
Yeah, well, we're doing a ton of work across the state, and from an Anthem perspective, we're helping where we can, and so where we can is how we build our health plans, and then how we build our network and increase the access. So we always talk about increased access and then lowering barriers to that access, and we've worked hard on both. So reducing those copays so that it's less expensive for members to go see a mental health provider, but then making sure we have the access available and having that access available, whether someone can go to an in-person visit or a virtual visit, because a lot of our young children in the state or families, they can't get to an in-person visit. So making sure those virtual options are available.
And boy, a lot of here in the VA, they're making more use of this too, because a veteran may be 40 minutes, 50 minutes away, but to be able to speak to a clinician or a therapist or a doctor, pretty privately and real time is cool. Well, thank you so much. And again, the best way, the website to get everything?
At anthem.com.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. When we come back, Neil Levesque, he'll talk about remembering Caroline Levitt at St. Anselm alumni, the incoming new press secretary for President-elect, former President Donald Trump, joining us, New Hampshire's own. Top of the show. Neil Levesque on deck next.
Thank you, sir.
So if you do Google Maps, all right, we are back. And Neil Levesque, Caroline Levitt joined us at the top of the show. You know her well. She graduated from where your Institute of Politics is. She was a student there. She referenced St. Anselm at least 3 times in her interview with me this morning, talking about when her parents first became aware she had been asked to be the press secretary, and she just shared when the president called her and asked her, and it's pretty big. I think you academically in history would agree with me. It's a pretty big mark for New Hampshire, regardless of politics, to have the spokesperson for the next president to be from our state and to you, your college. And I wanted you to share some thoughts on Caroline's success to the podium. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Are you surprised that she's the incoming press secretary, knowing your former student? Are you surprised or not at all? Yeah. 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 Well, don't give Andy Card that much credit. He's from Massachusetts and Holbrook originally, but I'm kidding. No, he's moved. I don't know if you knew that. He's in Texas now. I don't know if you knew that. He's down working. But it's funny you said, because it actually shows the history to let's stay with that for a moment, because it's interesting. So he got so close, Andy Card, with Bush Senior, as you remember, driving him around and all that as a younger Andy Card. And then he met, George W. He was in the Bush White House, and then he was in George W. 2 term. Andy's one of the longest serving chiefs of staffs, and of course his moment in history, because that's what these moments are. And you look at the time Caroline Levitt's coming in, the war in Ukraine. Hopefully that will get resolved. You have the Middle East, you have China, big moments. But Andy Card, of course, was in the school, I believe it was in Florida, when the president was sitting there and we were attacked 9/11 in New York, and he had to, with the young kids in the schoolroom, he had to whisper in the president's ear, "Sir, we're under attack." And that was his moment of, that moment where when then George W., they get him up in the plane, they flew around and all that. It's true. And Bush says to Andy Card, because Andy had told me this over dinner and casual times, and I love this history, and people don't realize this. And Caroline Levitt's going to be right there. the new president after 9/11 asked Andy Card, the chief of staff, how do I assemble the cabinet? I want a meeting right away. And I mean, you look at that history, right? And it's just amazing. And he's still down in Texas now with the Bush Library, I believe, doing that. So it's pretty amazing the history out of New Hampshire. So you raised a good point. John Sununu Sr. Yep. Oh, wow. Was it the Vicuna coat? No. And of course, John Sununu Sr. Chief of staff. It's pretty amazing. J Dog, help me out here. We're in the Walker School, our beautiful Binny Media headquarters in our 6-hour studio. But who was he became ambassador to Great Britain from Concord. You and I have talked about him. He took his own life, but yeah, why not? Yeah, he's an amazing story from New Hampshire because he goes over there at a very volatile time in history, came back and was, kind of never the same in terms of his own emotional state. But again, Neil, when you look at this administration, let's talk about press secretaries for a moment. I was sharing with our in studio guests for a moment. Remember Marlon Fitzwater? I remember Dee Dee Myers for Bill Clinton, how effective. I think she was quite a good. Um, but it seems to have gone downhill where the media and certainly the last 4 years I think the national mainstream media has been put down too much because they're almost punished by the White House press corps. The White House press people will threaten. I hope there's an more open exchange between because you go to look at the Kennedy Library in South Boston with Jack Kennedy, how he'd go into the White House press room and it was full of media from all over the country and world, and there was no like little cheat sheet notes of who he called on. They put their hands up in the air, and the president would call on you. He would answer your questions, and he would sit there or the press secretary for 45 minutes if it took that. And we've seen such a limited exchange the last 4 years. I hope that expands. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And being honest is like it's like a lost virtue in Washington. All right, Neil. Thank you for the reflection. Neil Levesque, St. Anselm College Institute of Politics. I just got to say this before we go to a break. Speaking of all this and what Neil was talking about, being honest as a press secretary for the president, when Mike Rowe was on the Friday in our Bringing Back the Trades, I didn't want to really go into the political side, but it's hard to not ask someone like Mike his perspective of kind of the election that just happened. And he's not inherently political that I can tell. And he answered a very diplomatic answer that said volumes to me. He said, Jack, and it goes to Neil Levesque's point, you can't lie and continue to lie to the American people as an administration. And he pointed out to something that a lot of people don't talk about. And I want to raise this question very, very seriously with you to make you think going into the break about something. And he brought up the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And he said, in his bringing back the trades work, he had met so many veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan and the Middle East and sacrificed so much blood and fight for the people there, the interpreters, the people that worked with us to fight terrorism and for the war on terror. And the current administration, for a press release, I think it was the week of July 4th, wanted to pull out of Afghanistan. And he said it was a mess. There were explosions at the airport. People were trying to get out. 13 service members were killed by terrorists at the airport. People were trying to hand their babies over the barbed wire fence at the airport to American soldiers flying home because they're willing to give up their children to not be tortured and kept down under the Taliban when the U.S. pulled out. And Mike said we left how many billions of dollars in military equipment for the bad guys? You can't sit there and through the national media, mainstream media, tell the Americans that was a successful withdrawal. And Putin probably watched that, as he said, and decided, I'm going to go into Ukraine because they're not going to do anything. You can't lie to the American people. And he wasn't it wasn't a pro-Trump statement, or he was making the point that the American people saw the departure from Afghanistan as a bad thing. But you can't lie and tell them it was a good thing. And do you ever notice, before I go to break, how quickly the mainstream media dropped showing you the video of the withdrawal from Afghanistan? I'm talking ABC, CBS, NBC, MSM. They stopped CNN. They stopped showing the withdrawal from Afghanistan because it didn't fit the narrative, because they were all in on the administration that just lost. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Back in a moment. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren concerned about the cost of pet care. All right, welcome back. It's interesting. Did you hear, speaking of tone deaf, to show you what a reset or a shift that the election was? You look at Manchester, New Hampshire, Senator Donna Soucy, been on my show quite a bit. She was sort of the leading Democrat senator, state senator from Manchester, state's largest city, losing. Kelly Ayotte, the Republican, doing so well in Manchester against Joyce Craig, her home city, former Mayor Joyce Craig of Manchester. And if you want to know how far reaching and how tone deaf the Democrat Party is, and Bernie Sanders was not wrong, the socialist senator, independent senator that he is, but he's part of the Democrat caucus. Bernie got reelected. Seth Moulton in Massachusetts, the congressman, got reelected. He's questioning why boys are playing in girls' sports. And the Democrats, he's a Democrat, are yelling. Mara Healey, they are trying to run him out of the state of Massachusetts. They can't believe that he actually is raising questions like that or saying that inflation is not transitory or that illegal immigration is a crisis. I mean, they can't believe this congressman, this Democrat, saying this. But let's look at someone who I get a tremendous political kick out of, and I'm being serious, and that's Senator Elizabeth Warren. Trump has taken her on. Elon Musk, before he bought Twitter, took her on. Now, if you want to know, and I think someone told me this earlier, so I'll give her credit or give Boston Globe credit for this. I think there's an article, might be today, about Senator Elizabeth Warren. Let me tell you about Senator Elizabeth Warren. She lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What college, here's a trivia question, what college is in Cambridge, Massachusetts? One of the oldest, most prestigious colleges in the world, in America, Harvard College, Harvard University. So Warren worked at Harvard. And, to tell you how disingenuous she is and how unbelievable that she keeps getting reelected, but I'm not surprised in Massachusetts. She did. This is a fact. And because I had a friend growing up who did this at Dartmouth College, and we all knew about it way back. She misrepresented herself when she said she was basically, of Native American, you know, ethnicity. In other words, not, Native American, not, if you say Hispanic, white, Caucasian, whatever those ethnic differentiators are when you apply, and she gets hired by Harvard. But if you and I did that, resume fudging, we'd be in trouble. But listen how tone deaf. So we just had an election, and many people are saying beyond the Trump voters that the Democrats, like Bernie Sanders said, have forgot the working class. They forgot who they represent. They forgot, like a business that files for bankruptcy, Chapter 11. They forgot who the customers are. They forgot the working class. They became this elite, hypocritical party of multimillionaires, liberal multimillionaire type folks, progressive, rich people that live in big homes like Warren in Massachusetts. And then they talk about who to tax and whose money to take. And they act like they care about people that are struggling to pay their electric bills or their grocery bills. And people see through the BS. I mean, just look at who Harris and Walz campaigned with. How many billionaires and rich people, Oprah Winfrey, the Obamas and their, how big of a home do they have down in, if it's Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard, not Nantucket, isn't it? Martha's Vineyard, wherever the Obamas have them, good for them. But 15,000 square foot home on the ocean. The Clintons, people who are really, Bruce Springsteen, all these celebrities Beyonce, all these rich people that would go there at the convention or on the trail with Harris and talk about poverty and folks who don't, they're in the cities and they're working hard and they can't afford this. And they talk about the poor, but the poor or poorer, financially speaking, Americans. And then they tell you who to blame. And they're sitting there flying in their private jets, living in their big homes. So Senator Elizabeth Warren is probably the hypocrite of the decade. Do you know what her lesson learned from the election is? Do you know what her big thing now is? The cost of pet care. I'm not kidding you. The illustrious senator from Massachusetts, Cambridge, Mass, Elizabeth Warren, her new focus is on the price of pet health care. I am not making this up. She's concerned about pet health care cost. Now, if you're like most people, still trying to buy groceries for your family, trying to pay your utility bills, trying to pay a health insurance deductible for a human being, Senator Elizabeth Warren is now focused on the cost of pet your pet healthcare. Seriously, your healthcare costs for pets and veterinary clinics and the healthcare costs for pets, not human beings. She's probably sideways, Joe. She's probably sideways that Bobby Kennedy is head of Health and Human Services. Just probably just freaking out because I don't know how much money Warren gets from pharmaceuticals, but you're gonna not talk about how much a family has to pay for a co-payment for healthcare as humans. Her focus is on pets. Her focus is on pets. You know, Kelly Ayotte ran for governor and did pretty well winning the election, talking about don't mass up New Hampshire. I got to tell you, as someone who left Massachusetts to move here, if Massachusetts really enjoys having a U.S. senator that's concerned about pet healthcare costs versus human, or not talking about inflation or the cost of illegal immigrants, and you keep voting for her, you deserve what you get. You deserve what you get, Massachusetts. Keep paying those taxes. Keep paying more money. And you know what? Let's put a little more of a sign saying you're leaving Massachusetts. Keep your politics here. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Back in a few.